Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me? My name is Katie Centron. I'm a team member of the RAISM Professional Development Committee, and I will be moderating this event today. As a reminder, please silence your cell phones. At the end of this event, you will have an opportunity to ask questions at the conclusion of this event. First, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank our sponsor today. They won't be speaking, but they've left snacks, goodies, pens, paper, and water. So help yourself in the back. It's First International Title. Okay, our guest panelists today are Darcy Duncan and Charles Bucke. Charles Bucke started working in real estate in 2001. He is part of a #1 team in Southwest Florida for Coldwell Banker. He has personally sold over 100 million a year and team sales over 200 million. His background is in finance and accounting. Charles has a strong presence in Anna Maria Island. Darcy Duncan, an island native, founder and broker owner of Duncan Real Estate. Darcy Duncan had an 11-year history in real estate business prior to creating Duncan Real Estate in 2001. Darcy and her team boost over $1 billion in closed transactions. Will you please give a warm welcome to Anna Maria Island's top producers, Darcy Duncan of Duncan Real Estate and Charles Bucke of Coldwell Banker Realty. Okay, let me start with the first question. We'll see if your mics are on. Denise, can you check their mics? Our panelists.
Okay. Oh, it's
the same?
yeah, button on the green button. There you go. Other way. Just push it. Yeah.
Perfect. Great.
There you go.
Darcy, let's start with you. Where, when, and why did you get into real estate?
Oh my. I got into real estate 33 years ago. Why do we have feedback? Should I need to roll away from you? So, Charles, are we too close together? Do we have to go sit in the opposite side of the room? Because we're like echoing, sorry. 33 years ago, I got into real estate. I was actually going to get into sports medicine and I don't know, I just decided I'm getting into real estate. My mom sold real estate. She needed an assistant and that was the hardest job I ever had my entire life. And I'm surprised I'm still in real estate. I'm kidding. But she, 33 years ago, when you ask, how did you get started, is not going to help you today because it was just completely different. And I was one of the youngest people to ever start. So it was very, 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 very difficult for me. But that's when I got into it. My mom motivated me to do it. And, I love my island and I was good with people and it was a natural fit. And there you go.
So you're the broker and also do you sell?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Great. Charles, where, when, and why did you get into real estate?
Before real estate, I worked on Wall Street. So I came out of college and I took a job with Morgan Stanley and worked in the World Trade Center. 9/11 happened and I thought it was a good opportunity to switch careers and come back locally. So I took that opportunity. My father was in the business, so they were working for Arvida at the time. Was bought out by Coldwell Banker. Longbow Key originally worked for Arvida on the development side. So I talked to my father, my aunt about getting in the business. My father told me I could sit open house in a house every day for the next year. And that was his big help to me. And I sat there for 9 to 5 for 365 days. And that's how I entered the business.
So how did you get to Anna Marie Island? I mean, is that where you started? or you
I
graduated?
grew up on Anna Maria also. So my family moved to Anna Maria when I was 10 years old from Chicago. So grew up on Anna Maria, and then it's really a tight knit community still, I think. So just always had a passion for the island and the islands. I saw just more than Anna Maria. I worked Longboat and Lido a lot. For just the islands, the waterfront, love it and grew up on it. And that's why I decided to continue to work there.
Yeah, a lot of people, whether you're seasoned agent or you're new to the business, a lot of them, some of them don't even know that much about Anna Marie Island, which is one reason why today we wanted to focus on the top producers of Anna Marie Island, because we've never had a top producer up in northern Manatee County. Next question, Darcy, who is involved in your day-to-day success?
A lot of people. I mean, I think with all of us, it takes a village, my family, but really my team. I have an incredible team, and they are my family. They're not just my team. And we support each other very, very much every day. And I want to see them do good, and just as well as they want to see me do good, and we all do good. But I mean, we have people that have been under my team for, I've been open almost 22 years, in my 15 years, that's a long time. Cindy, she's sitting in the room, she's my longest team member, but your family, your team, and your colleagues, in the business too. I mean, they're part of your support system as well, but
Absolutely, you have to surround yourself
Yeah.
with good people in order to be
100%.
successful.
absolutely.
Charles, what about you?
Yeah, I think Darcy's spot on. I think it starts from, I work for Coldwell Banker, so we have a great manager. So she's, surrounding staff always like on your side. I feel like I have a small part of the job. My job is putting the transaction together. Once I do that, I hand the ball off, and I rely on everybody that's around me to continue to put the ball in the end zone. So I hand the ball off, then I look for the next one. So I'm always on the hunt for the next one. I really don't sit there and like micromanage every part of the process. I rely on people that we put in those positions to do their job. So I think, everybody does their job, the ball moves. Someone drops the ball, you have to pick it up and continue forward.
True teamwork.
Yes.
Mhm.
Okay, Darcy, what do you enjoy most about working with sellers or buyers?
Oh,
different
my,
animals.
that is I'm like, okay, so let me see what personality is gonna talk. No, I'm kidding. I love, when you deal with sellers, you're dealing with so many different situations every time. It's not like, when you look at the island market and you think, oh, wow, you saw these big expensive homes, there's more than that to it. It's the families, it's the generational people, it's people that are in crisis. And I feel that it's not just about selling the home, but I connect with all these sellers in a completely different way. I mean, they become your family, right? Because it's a big deal. And especially when, in our community, we have a lot of retirees, and you're dealing with a lot of estates and the families and the idiosyncrasies and 12 siblings and all that. But it's a gift, and I love it. And I love all the sellers are just awesome. Buyers, I love working with buyers too. They're fun, they're challenging. Don't believe anything they tell you, because usually they do the complete opposite of anything they've ever wanted or anything. So that is the hardest thing, is really navigating your way through a buyer's mind, because they can want one thing and next thing you know, we do the complete opposite. So my mother taught me that years ago and said, buyers are liars and sellers are too. Oh, okay, Mom, thanks for that tidbit. Okay. So just, this buyers are so fun. And, for us, especially on Anna Maria, we have such a huge global, so many different people from all over the world and all different walks of life. And it's really cool. We get to meet some really neat people that really become your friends and lifelong, relationships too, which is great.
We've been told it's a small knit community, like a family.
Yeah.
Charles, what about you? What do you enjoy most about working with sellers or buyers?
When you finally get them to close on something.
True
No, I think,
that.
just like your kids or any relationship, everyone is different. So it's like learning how to deal with the new buyer and their needs and wants and the seller and expectations and managing both. I mean, every time I take a listing, I go in there and I tell the seller that, if we're not on the same team, I don't want to do it. So I've been fortunate enough to grow our business to a point where if we need each other, I want to work together and I'll do everything possible to move forward with you. But if I'm going to fight you out of the gate on day one, then, call Darcy.
It's all right. I have boxing gloves, Charles.
So I think, getting buyers and sellers to, realize that you have a life and you have other things going on besides them, appreciate each other's time, and then let them know that you're doing everything possible at all times to move forward on the sale process or the purchase process. I mean, the last year I sold a house for almost 20 million. I sold one for 50,000, and I put the same effort into both. So if I'm willing to take you on, I'm going to give you everything. I mean, the $50,000 one, I had my whole team of 4 people driving through every mobile home park around town trying to get, and we couldn't find anything. And that closing one, I think, was one of my biggest accomplishments. It was harder than selling a $20 million house. So just let them know, like, again, you're there for them. You're going to do everything possible. And if they realize that's the truth, then the process becomes a lot more simple.
That's great. You treat a customer, whether they're $1 million customer or just a couple 100,000 or less customer, the same. I love that. Give them the
Absolutely.
respect that they deserve.
And build the trust with them too is important. I think,
100%.
100%, you got to build that trust.
Okay, let's move on to mindset and business. As a top producer, how do you balance working on your business versus in your business? Darcy.
I'm in my business. I don't know how I answer that and say I'm not in the business all the time. Do I step out of it and take a break? Absolutely. Am I working on my business? Absolutely. But that's where you carve time out when you're making changes, you're looking at different things you want to do, implementing systems, etc. But I think it's very difficult, especially in a small community, that you're not always in your business. I mean, it comes home with me. We work 20, I put boundaries up and try to have a life too, but not everybody works the same schedule you do. So finding the work-life balance is hard, but I'm working in my business 24/7, and that's just how I roll. So.
And I'm sure that realtors out there can understand that are raising families as well. You're raising your family, you're trying to build your business, you juggle a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Charles, what are your short and long-term goals do you have in place for your business?
Short term, I mean, I'm analytical by nature, so I'm constantly looking at numbers, and I have a lot of clients that I manage their real estate portfolio. So instead of just dealing with like everyday transactions, I have to work on the other side of it also, almost like a commercial side, but on the residential aspect of it. So, I never forecast the market, and I don't have that crystal ball. So anybody that says, that the market's going up or down or sideways, I always make decisions based on the now. So what I see now is how I make a decision for the future. I don't control global events. I don't control 9/11. I don't control oil spills, BP oil spills. I think if you're here long enough, you see it all. I don't control red tide. So stay in the now and stop worrying about all the other stuff that'll distract you. I think focus now, and that'll lead to future results.
As
So
they stay in your lane.
yeah, stay focused and keep your blinders on a lot of times and move forward.
Okay, moving on, leads. Darcy, where does the majority of your business come from?
Well, that's, I get a yellow pad and start at year one. 33 years doing in the business and working every day at it. And that's all I've ever done. A lot of my business is referral based, and you work really hard at that. And, that's a value for all of you. Referrals are everything, and don't ever forget that. But, a lot of my business is referral based. Yes, it's internet leads and cold calls and advertise, all those things. But really, You know, so many of your leads as you get going, if you're newer in your career, your sphere of influence, they're your community, they're what you're involved in, and you do one good job, it's the ripple effect, and you're not having to pay for that, you know, advertising that's free. Just remember you're always on. So those, you know, someone sees you and how you present yourself, they're like, wow, you know, I met her and she's really cool or whatever. She was easy to get along with, you know, she's on my pickleball team. I know Charles plays pickleball. You know, whatever, but those are the people that you build your business from. So truthfully, I mean, if I had to sit here all these years, the biggest lead generator for me is referrals.
That's great. Charles, where does the majority of your business come from?
Two parts. I think Darcy's spot on. I always tell people, like, especially new people getting into the industry, I say, you know, just do what you love to do. If you do what you love to do, you'll meet people that are like you and that want to work with you. I've never went in anywhere telling anybody I'm a realtor. I don't wear a badge. I don't really advertise. But I do things I love to do. And when people see that you're there for that reason, eventually you get to know them and you create a relationship. My business is very relationship driven. Most new leads are always come from referrals or listings that you generate. So I think for every listing you generate, the rule is you should at least pick up one new buyer. You know, if you're better at it, you should pick up at least two. So I think generation of like try and control inventory, listing side, but then just, you know, if you're a golfer, I hired a guy and I told him to go play golf every day. You know, just play. This is what you like to do. You're good at it. You're great with people. Don't worry about anything else. I don't need you to sit in an office. I don't need you to do this. I need you to meet 3 new people every day. Go out and play golf. And when they ask you what you do, this is what you do. No product, you know, that's number one. If you have no product knowledge, you have 0 chance of being successful. So, you know, I tell new people that also, like, sit on your phone, look at Zillow while you're watching TV, you know, spend a half-hour a day, just learn new product, go, you know, 20 plus years ago, you had to go on Caravan every week and you had to learn new product. The amount of people that don't know product baffles me. And that's why majority of the sales are controlled by, you know, 10% of the people that sell real estate, is because the other 90% don't know market, or they don't take it serious. They don't know product. Understand product. If you don't understand product, quit. I would just say leave. You know, that's your job. If you don't understand what you're trying to sell or list, or
you're never going to
do something else you'd rather do. You know, there's a lot of other good jobs out there. But I think if you take it serious, study products, study, you know, work in a market that you want to work in, the place that you want to play pickleball or your kids go to school. You know, I don't like to work where I live that much. So I stay out of that area a little bit.
How do you do that? Oh, I know.
Yeah.
I won't.
Yeah. So I hide. But when I'm on the island, you know, I'm out and, you know, I eat out all the time and I meet clients out all the time. And, you know, just that's what I enjoy doing. So I also create relationships with my clients and I have them create relationships with each other. So you're sort of creating a web. And I think when you create that web, then it catches more people.
Absolutely. Working with customers and clients. Darcy, what is the most common deal maker or breaker question you get from sellers or buyers?
Well, that's kind of 2 questions. So let's see, deal breaker from a seller, deal breaker from a buyer. You know, I think that, you know, we don't deal with a lot of too many financing issues. We deal with a lot more cash buyers that we see more lately. And has been that way. So I wouldn't say financing so much has been an issue, but with a seller and a buyer, you know, we deal with as is contracts. We have, you know, walk away if you don't like the inspection, then everyone wants to negotiate inspections. And in Charles and I know we just had a transaction together. We were talking about that too, where you got to negotiate back and forth on, yeah, the roof leaks or what, you know. And I see that deals deteriorate mostly when it comes down to negotiating down to little nitpicky items in a contract that irritate everybody. And we're now complaining over, and we deal with furnished homes a lot. So let's do this. And I use a monkey lamp as an example. You know, someone held up a closing because a lamp that had a monkey on it wasn't there. You're buying $1 million piece of property and I'll go guide you a monkey holding a lamp. I mean, you know, these are the kind of things that I see deteriorate both sides, are the little details that make they're irrelevant. But people get fixated on that. So, down to nitpicking inspections because they're just trying to get $1 out of a seller or whatever, I see that a lot. But as far as other obstacles, sometimes when you have a value issue, if someone's getting financing and the buyer doesn't agree and the seller doesn't agree, and you got to come together on that. But I haven't had that many issues recently with that. It's really down to little inspection issues. Or possibly, we deal with non-conforming stuff, and sometimes that's odd for buyers and they don't understand that, and then they're trying to make a big deal out of it. But that's how I feel about that, is more the details and the little things that become the big thing that can kill a big deal, down to the small little negotiations.
And that's a great point that you made. Anna Marie Island is basically, isn't it a lot of Airbnbs?
Oh, yeah, they're
Yeah, so
mostly all vacation rental
when I
homes.
first got in the business, seasoned agent told me the furnishings were always a little, like you said, it's just a small tiny thing can break a whole deal.
Yeah, and they
Painting.
forget what you're buying a beautiful piece of real estate. It's not about the couch. But they become that in our business. I mean, this might not be so much, for these in your marketplaces where you're not selling so much furnished, but I'm just using that as an example, whether it's an inspection issue or something like that, because it's usually down to the littlest thing that makes this massive heave. And that's our job, of course, to rein everybody in and overcome those objections. But those are the things where I see the biggest thing with the buyer and the seller, down to minor inspection issues.
Charles, what about you? Do you agree?
Yeah, I think again, Darcy's spot on. I don't let little things stop a deal.
No doubt.
So I'm always, we're very good at overcoming obstacles. I think the more real estate you sell, the more obstacles you have to overcome, and you just become that's your norm. So it's not like something comes up that I've ever felt like I can't handle it. I don't know what to do. If I can get a deal together, I'd say over 99% of the time we close the deal. So anything that pops up, just, again, have your resources ready, who you call if something pops up. I see something that a lot of people from up north aren't used to, like termites or something like that. So again, just making people feel comfortable. But always, I think biggest obstacle is if, buyer and seller, both feel like they're in a fair place with the price of the property. I think if that happens and out of the gate, and you could always go back to that, like, again, the original purpose you bought the house, we can overcome any obstacles. It's very few times that there's something so big. And usually if that happens, I don't feel like they're the real buyer or seller for that property anyways. So.
And just to throw in a wrench, you mentioned northern buyers. How about insurance when they go to get their flood insurance?
Give them a class.
Yeah, that's becoming I guess your biggest obstacle is insurance right now by far.
100%.
On the barrier islands, insurance is a huge red flag right now. The state of Florida has not done a great job overall with bringing new carriers in. There's a lot of people leaving the business. Premiums are astronomical right now relative to price. So that is something that some people are skeptical, and it is slowing some people. Instead of pulling the trigger, they're waiting on that. But I think if they come to the point of, like, you've actually executed a contract, then they're pretty aware of that. I think it's for the preliminary buyer looking to purchase that hasn't pulled the trigger, that might be a holdup. But again, have your contacts on the insurance side, and hopefully forward in the future. Again, we don't have that crystal ball, but you have to think that something's going to happen to open that market back up. And
and I think it's on Charles' point too. I think it's a good idea. And those of you that aren't dealing with flood insurance and insurance, those kind of issues as much, where it is the major cost now driver in a transaction, is to go through those costs before you're out here showing these people every house known to man and writing offers. And then they go down to it and go, oh, well, I didn't know it was going to be $20,000 to insure it. I thought it'd be 10, and I think a lot of that, you need to be a little proactive now. So you're not getting yourself in the pickle while you're in the deal and everybody wants to move forward and, they're on a certain budget. You know, it's important because, you know, and also too, you can't always just call and ask and go, so what's your seller play for flood? Well, if his flood policy has been, you know, not been renewed, or he's got a different plan, it doesn't apply to what your new buyer is going to be. You need to get a new quote. And so they're clear on that. So that's another thing to help you, so you're not losing a deal at the end because of cost of insurance, you
And
know?
that's another class, hurricane preparedness with insurance and
Mm.
the escalating rates and the graph that Florida's on.
It's fun.
Professional development, Darcy, what is your go-to resources or groups?
You know, I go all over the place. You know, I get online a lot. You know, we have busy schedules, so it's hard. And you want to plan something, you want to come to something and listen, you can't get there and you got to jump on. And I just Zoom is hard for me anymore. I'm over it. I'm burned out. I like to be with people and learn and talk, but you know, it's reality. I'll get on, you know, I do watch some of the higher end agents in different areas of the country. So you kind of learn things from them and get on some of their groups on it. There's a YouTube channel I watch, you know, different things. But I use resources from NAR. I use resources from FAR. I use resources from colleagues, different, you know, higher end groups, you know, that higher end agents, and learn the tricks of the trade. And I'll watch that. Just like Charles says, if you're not doing anything on TV and you're Zoom and Zillow, I'll sit there and read a quick article. You know, knowledge is power. So the more you can learn, and no matter how long you've been in it, there's always something you can learn. So I'm all about that.
Charles, what is your go-to resources or groups?
Other realtors,
Mhm.
by far. I think, you know, one of my, biggest reasons for being successful in the business is relationships I build with other realtors. They know if they have questions, I'm here for them, and vice versa. So I'd say constantly, whether I'm showing or not showing, you know, I call different realtors every day. You know, I want to know what's going on in their business. I want to know what they have going on. If they have any new listings coming up, I want to know, are they dealing with anybody? Do they know of anybody looking for a property? I had a good story. We had a listing up on the north end of Anna Maria, and I had a new agent that just took the listing, and it was a $2 million listing, and he's sitting there in open house and he's frustrated. And I asked him, like, well, what are you doing? Like, you know, what are you doing to try and get people in here? He says, I don't know. I said, well, let's just start calling other realtors. So I started, you know, I just went through my phone and I started, let's start at the top and we'll call 10 people. And one of the people we call, she says, well, you know, I don't have anybody, but I know someone was looking for a house like that. You know, she's working with this realtor. I said, okay, let me call. She worked for Darcy. So I called, Liz told me, and I said, Liz, if I call, and I said, hey, Jessica, like, you know, what are you doing? Like, I heard you have someone. She's like, oh yeah, that seems like exactly what I want. So, well, she said, can I see it tomorrow? I said, yeah, of course, come on in. And they wrote an offer and we got it together. But knowing who's out there looking for property, and the way you do that is by creating relationships with other realtors. So I'm always constantly talking to, you know, everybody across the board on that side. You know, I want to know what's going on, who they're working with, you know, get very involved in other people's business, and then share information. If you have something, share it with them. You know, information like that. It's going back sort of the old school way real estate used to be sold, you know, before,
Exactly.
you know, and I still, you know, I guess I'm more old school. That's
Got
how,
an MLS book, thank God.
yeah.
You
So
guys
it's,
probably know.
it used to be all relationships. I still think it's a relationship business, and, you know, approach it that way.
Even though we can access our office listings on the MLS, you made a great point about sharing. You could walk past somebody in your office and say, hey, do you have anybody that's interested that wants to buy a condo with a boat slip? Next thing you know, they're like, I actually do.
Right, and your team should be doing that too within your office. I mean, I encourage that every time someone's working on something, email your team. You don't know, every day is different. You don't know who walked in the door this morning. So communicate with your people. And Charles and I mean, we talked last week, he called, what's going on? You know, I mean, you do, I know we kind of deviated from the question a little bit, but we all are a team. And we all have to help each other and work together to get a deal done. We can't get a deal done with you know, there's two of us most of the time on the deal. We all have to work together, and we're a team to get that done. And like Charles says, communicating and talking and calling people and who's working with who, that's great. That's how we make deals happen. And you need that from all your you know, you guys got to help each other and call each other and work it. And that's what makes things happen. And
Yeah,
it's great.
It's not a passive business, just sit
Not
and
at
wait.
all.
So,
And we get, and this is why we close more you know, that's how you get things closed. I mean, you gotta be the squeaky wheel, you
As
know?
they say, the business doesn't come knocking on.
Mm-mm.
and I always love to tell like my family whenever we go on a vacation, if I'm not like very proactive with my phone doesn't ring. And like people assume like, oh man, like right now I have over $100 million in listings. So like your phone must be going crazy. No, my phone doesn't ring. I make my phone ring. I think it only makes outgoing calls actually. I don't think my phone doesn't ring that often, but the more you use it, then it starts to come back and pays you forward.
Great. What, Charles, how do you prepare for a listing presentation or a buyer consultation?
I show up.
I show up.
I show up.
I love,
I show up.
that's a great answer. On time,
I show up.
on time. Let's ask this.
I'm not, I think, by the time I get invited, if I get invited to a listing, the seller's done their homework. They know that I sell real estate. They
Mhm.
have some idea that I somewhat know what I'm doing, I hope. So then I explain what I do that others might not do. I explain, I'm trying to create that relationship in that meeting. I'm trying to make it, instead of just business, warm it up. So when I can take it to that next level, then and I'm going to say there's, again, like if I go into a listing presentation and I don't present anything except myself, I'd say 99% of the time I'm going to walk away and I know I'm going to get the listing. So during that, I just, these are things that I do every time I go, or if I take a listen, this is what I'll do. And I listen to them. I talk less, listen more, see what they expect, make sure I think it's going to be a fit for us. And then, I'm very, again, I feel like I know the market very well, especially in areas that I sell. And I'll walk in sometimes and I say, I'm not your guy. I'll tell them that, like, I'm not the person for you. I don't know your neighborhood. I had to use my GPS to get here and I still got lost 3 times. And
So in that particular
Refer.
instance, do you refer it out?
Mhm.
no, they come back and they beg you to take it. It's even worse, so it's like, but then it's like, then it becomes a challenge. Like, okay, now I showed up here, to help you. Now I'm going to help you and I'm going to figure it out real quick. So then I'd say even sometimes when I work outside of my normal market, my niche market, then, I work even harder because I don't know it as well.
Mhm.
So I consume myself in it. And I have that OCD thing going on. So I just dig in and I refuse to like not sell the house then. But yeah, if it's too far out of my area, we're happy to refer it. We have a lot of great people we work with all over the country.
Yeah,
Okay.
referrals are big. That's good.
Yeah.
Darcy, you secured an appointment with a seller or buyer lead. What do you do to ensure they'll honor that appointment?
That they'll honor the appointment. Usually they're the ones making it. So, asking for it. I'm not usually the one setting it. They are. So I work around. I don't really have an issue with people not showing up for their appointments. I've not had that issue.
Do you
Maybe you
prepare
screw the wrong time
for
up.
listing presentations and
Mhm.
buyer consultations?
Sure. And like Charles says, is it a little easier for you when you've done it as for 33 years and you know your market and you walk in with that confidence? Yeah, because that's part of, a lot of it's your confidence, right? So yeah, I mean, you've earned your way to have maybe that listing appointment a little bit easier than the other. But yeah, I always come prepared with data. Like Charles says, most of these people are doing their homework before they're calling you. Buyers are savvy, sellers are savvy, they all do their homework. But you don't know a person by because just what you read about them on the internet. So a lot of times, your appointments, you're making that connection with somebody, and that's where you're going to build from, because we're all, we all have the same tools in the toolbox. It's how we pull our tools out of the box and use them with our clients, right? So it just depends on the client I'm going to meet with and what their needs are, what I'm going to bring, what I need to prepare for. And but I do go with the presentation.
Okay, we're going to get into marketing. What online marketing do you think you find most effective and what offline marketing gets you the best results?
Are you asking me that?
I'm gonna ask Charles that.
Okay,
Okay, marketing.
you don't have to worry about that. Coldwell Banker does that for you. don't they?
Yeah, I am actually lucky. So we have a
You
whole,
are.
we have a whole marketing global preview section. So a lot of my properties that I sell are the over million or 2 million. I think my average sale is somewhere in the 3 million range. So that on the preview side, they have a whole marketing team that sends out press releases every time we list like a more special property, but through Coldwell Banker, when we list a property, I think it goes on over 1,000 different websites and branded throughout that way. Like me personally, I really don't spend a lot of time or money on that side. Going back to the last question, something that I'll tell you that I always tell a seller when I'm in their houses, why they're hiring me is because I'm going to show up. Just like I showed up for the listing appointment, I'm going to show up every time someone's in your house because I don't expect anybody else to be able to do my job. So when I go into that meeting, I feel like majority of the time, if I'm not working with someone that's more seasoned in the business, that I'm
You
doing
have
their
to be
job.
there.
So I have to do their job. I have to educate them on the house. I have to educate their buyer on the house. So I'm there to sell your house. That's why you hired me. You didn't hire me to send my assistant. You didn't hire me to put a lockbox on it. So again, like I think a lot more transactions will happen if you take a listing, show up. I'm not that busy to not show up to every time one of my houses is shown. Once in a while there's conflicts, but majority of the time I'm there. You're going to see my face. You show one of my listings, you're going to see me. We're going to open the house up for you. We're going to make you feel comfortable. If you want to see the house and preview it first, we're going to offer that to you. I want agents to feel comfortable in a house because then they're more likely to sell that house, or they're going to take someone back there because they felt like they know where everything is. So my big thing when I take a listing is going back to that. You're going to get me. You're going to get me in your house. You're going to get me helping the other agent. You're going to get me helping their buyer. You're going to get me helping their closing. You're going to get me doing everything. And I'm going to take it and run with it. So,
And after the listing presentation, continue a line of communication, crucial.
yeah, so every seller is a little bit different. Some want more up-to-date information. A lot of our sellers are absentee, big chunk of the year. So depends on how hands-on they want to get is, how we'll adjust to that. Some people do not want to know every time their house was shown. And, if someone didn't buy it, the real feedback is the price wasn't right for that buyer. That's the only obstacle you're always overcoming. It's not the location or it's not big enough here or this, it's price.
So
So
communication is important.
communication is huge. I'm not the greatest at it, but I'm always trying to improve.
It's hard for everybody. You got to
yeah.
communicate all the time. And I didn't mean to interrupt, but people crave that. And
Yeah.
I think that that's an
Some more than
advantage. Yeah. And
Oh,
some more than others, but
100%.
most of the time, if you look at a lot of information and data, everyone complains that no one communicated. I never heard from my realtor. I don't know what's going on. And so, I mean, and the first thing when you talk to people, do you want a smoke signal, a text, an email, a phone call, WhatsApp? I don't, you need to ask them because especially with our generational spread of people, this age group wants this and this one wants it that, so that's one of the first things. How would you like me to communicate with you, which is so important.
And that brings me to my second question. Age groups, which social media channels do you use most and why?
Well, I have a social media team and actually we're working on that right now. We're doing a bunch of stuff, TikTok, because it's a big, now understand my business, we're two businesses under one roof. So we do vacation rental business and then our sales business, but they work hand in hand. When you work on Anna Maria Island, you need to have that. So we're not always just fixated, always just on what's selling real estate because we have to cover a whole big bubble of people. But TikTok seems to be huge. We have a huge Instagram following. We do really good data tracking on social media on the leads that we get coming in. And, we work very, very, very hard on that on the analytics side. So we know where we need to switch. Do I have a YouTube channel? No, I do not. I mean, if you sit here and you can spend all this time doing all this stuff and it doesn't do you any good. I'd rather be out on the street talking to people and I'll do it all day long than dancing on TikTok. But, you need to be there and have a presence. It's important. And as you're working in through your Gen X customers and all these different people, This is how they communicate. They don't talk. They can't. They don't know how to. They can't look up and see you outside of their phone. And you have to recognize that, because this is going to be your next group of buyers coming in. They don't talk. They do this. So, TikTok, Instagram, and that's how they're watching everything. And it's actually fascinating. But, Facebook's for old farts, like me in their 50s. We're all Facebook people, we like that. It's easy. But, it's important. I think from social media too, just for you all, is good for branding yourself. It's about branding too. It's not saying I'm going to do this and a buyer's going to call me, or this person's going to rent this out. You're branding yourself out there too. And you just have to get out there on social media and see, what's going to make you different than the sea of the 8,600 realtors you have in this association. So that's a lot of people in our community that have a license. Not that a lot of them are probably selling, but you know what I'm saying? That's a lot of people. How do you make yourself stand apart on social media? So, think about those things. You talk about influencers, why can't you be an influencer in real estate? It doesn't take rocket, you can get out there. I mean, there's a lot of cool stuff going on social media that you can be doing. That's not a lot of money for you to do, especially if you're getting newer out of the starting gate too, where you don't have those dollars in a tighter market where you're not selling as much right now. So, we all, we're all looking at that.
And sometimes Facebook groups that
Mm,
feed off of real estate.
huge.
Are an option as well to get leads.
I watch them. We have like some island, stuff. It's fascinating how many people go on there and ask for a realtor on there, and who shoots what, where, what, and everybody's on it. And but it's interesting. And so a lot of people do look for that, because what is that? A referral. So that is a referral. So if you're out there on social media or in your My Neighborhood app or whatever the heck you want to be on, it's interesting to see how much is going on and referring back and forth. So think about that,
Even restaurant referrals.
Oh, yeah.
Anything. I mean, it's a potential lead.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I think, being part of your community and setting yourself apart on the social media side, you're not just about selling real estate. You're a resource for your community. So yeah, I mean, will people come to me and go, where's the best bar to drink at? I'm going to say, yeah, my house. No, I'm kidding. But, but seriously, though, we know that. I mean, Charlie, you live on the island forever. Where's
Yeah.
my favorite place? I sit at the waterfront, whatever. But that's how you connect with people, because you're the resource, and then go, well, oh, no, I want to buy a house. Okay, good. Let's go,
Charles, which social media channels do you prefer or use most, and why?
I'm more old school, so I really don't spend a lot of time on social media. When I do spend time on social media, it's because like me to share something with for my family that other people, like friends and other, old clients that see, and that always draws up a conversation. So I think if you overuse it too, it's like crying wolf all the time.
100%.
Like nobody's really going to look at you, but if I post something, it's sincere, it comes from the right place. So I don't overuse it. I think I use it enough to
Good point.
be relevant, and not a huge guy on that side of it.
And I agree with Charles on overuse, because I actually I will hear people talk about that. I'm not going to say anything, and we'll use certain individuals as an example of how many posts they do. And it's just, it's terrible. You're killing yourself. Take some social media classes, don't do that.
At that point, the audience almost scrolls
Oh, yeah,
past it.
they
It's
won't.
too
They're
much.
done. They're done with you. Yeah, absolutely.
What are your thoughts regarding best ways to use third-party syndication sites?
Charles, answer that.
Third-party syndications, like, can you get like a little bit more detail? Sorry.
I believe that.
Like IDX listings,
Yeah.
Zillow. I
Yeah.
hate them.
Yeah, I really don't use, again, whatever naturally falls through our photographers,
Through Coldwell Banker.
through,
Yeah.
but even my individual photographers that we use, they post all the stuff there for us.
Right.
So, just make sure you're up to date. It's, relevant data that's going on there. And
So your question is like, where do we link to? Is that what you're
What's the
asking?
best way to use a third-party syndication site?
Well,
What are your thoughts?
I mean, you better pay attention to them, because they're pulling all your data, a lot of them, and feeding it out. And a lot of it's not correct. So you really need to keep track of that, because You know, even, you know, you sit there and say, yeah, you can link to, you know, Zillow or Truly, you know, whatever, Redfin, you know, all this stuff. A lot of this data is incorrect, so it's up to you to follow it. And it's very hard to watch your data depending on where your brokerages are feeding out the data, where your board's feeding out the data, you know, et cetera. So it's hard to keep track of all that. I think we all know Zillow's our big animal in the room that takes all our data. I'm not a fan of Zillow myself. You know, I feel like they've taken a lot of your data and
Yeah.
they're now having to buy your leads back. I don't agree with that. That's always been my stance on that. So, but you got to work with Zillow. They're the big animal in the room, you know?
I think Darcy's also right again, like, make sure your data is correct
Mm.
and know how to edit your data on those sites.
Mhm.
So if you don't
Takes
know
a
how,
lot of
if you
work.
don't know how to go in like Zillow or Realtor.com and edit your data, like something to figure out. So figure out how to do that. So when it's not correct, you make those changes quickly, because sellers don't like when their data is incorrect on their websites.
And they watch it all the
Yeah.
time. The sellers are fixated on everywhere their house is and looking for it all the time and what's where and where it's feeding. They're
How many,
watching it.
yeah, how many saves you have now?
Yeah, exactly. Darcy, don't you know that I have 85 likes right now? Have you followed up on all of them? Since yesterday? No. Okay. But you know, yeah, they do.
How important are client reviews and where should agents get and use them?
Whose questions now?
Okay, how about how important are client reviews?
Is that mine? Is
Yeah.
Charles?
Darcy.
Huge. They're everything. Nobody wants to hear you talk about yourself and say how great and wonderful you are. It's all about what the client that worked with you says about it, because that means something. They're huge. You should get a review, a testimonial from every single person you work with. And if not, you know, if you got to bribe them, whatever, I'm kidding. But they're huge. And people want to see that. Those are, you know, it's just like you, everybody in this room, you're not going to sit here and tell me, you know, go shopping on Amazon and make sure that it has 4.5, 5 stars. You're not even going to look at it. The same thing applies to you as a business person in those reviews and your Google reviews, or if you use Rate My Agent, you know, whatever you're using for your reviews so that you're getting them. And, you know, I tell my clients, and, you know, I get most all my reviews back, and most of our team does. But we tell our folks ahead of time, you know, our reviews mean a lot to us. And, you know, we'd really appreciate if you take 60 seconds out of your day. You know, once our deal is done, you know, you'll get that. And we really appreciate it. And we get them on most everybody. You should get them on everything you do.
Okay, partnerships. Who are the most important affiliates in your day-to-day business and why? I'll use an example, a lender, attorney, title company, appraiser. Charles?
You know, of course, title companies. So, you know, again, once that deal's put together, I hand that ball off. So I have, you know, direct contacts I use over and over all the time for the same deals. So they make my life a lot easier. Home inspectors, you know, you want someone does a great job, but also can explain it to buyer or seller. Like, you know, instead of just reading a 100-page report, you want someone that's going to take time to say, you know, give them like the more pertinent information, things that really affect things. I'd say definitely those two are my biggest. I don't deal with a lot of banks or appraisers, thankful for that. But definitely title companies, attorneys, home inspectors are my big three.
I'm going to throw just a curveball here. The majority of your business, is it financed or cash?
I'd say over 90% of our deals are cash.
Wow. Darcy, what about you?
Well, with affiliates, and I agree with Charles, of course, we all need our title companies, our lenders, our surveyors, you know, et cetera.
Handyman.
Yeah, our handyman, whatever. But, you know, on that too, you know, in our area, and I'm sure a lot of you as well, you have people that want to go in and add a third bedroom. You want people that want to remodel, they need a home state, you know, whatever. So I kind of look beyond that to, you need your interior designer, you need your architect, you need your handyman, your builders. We both, and Charles, you know, we both have clients who develop and build, et cetera. You know, we have very good relationships in our building departments with our building officials, it's important. you know, especially on the island, we got a lot going on out there and it's a lot to navigate, especially if you're just coming out there, you'd just blow your mind. So it's important to have those too, because we need those people too, to be able to get our business done too, when you're looking at development or remodels, et cetera, additions, especially when you're improving on the island and flood zones, it's a whole different ball of wax. So those are really part important of your, you know, your team.
Okay, we're gonna start wrapping up these questions, so the last half we can use for your questions. This is reflection. Charles, what is the biggest challenge you faced and how did you overcome it? Now, that's a big question.
You know, I think it's, you know, not in real estate. I think it's always in your personal life. That's, you know, something in your personal life happens and affects you and it carries forward into your business. So, you know, again, I don't think there's ever been a time in, you know, over 20 years that there's not something happening where it could derail you. You know, stay focused, you know, life, you know, I always say that there's three things you need working right: your mind, body, and spirit. So like me, it's like, if my mind's good and my body's good and my spirit's off, it's like I can still function. If I have two of those off, it's like you're off the deep end, you know, you're sinking. So, you know, find time for yourself, keep your mind right, you know, keep your body right, keep your spirit right. You know, there's enough time in the day to accomplish all. Don't get overwhelmed with small things. I get up early every day. I like to start because I'm on my own time. So if I wake up at 4 a.m, I go to the gym. My wife and kids are asleep, so it's my time. You know, I always think like between midnight and 7 a.m. when I take my kids to school is my time. So anything I want to do during that time is on me. So I wake up early, I go to the gym, I check emails. You know, by the time I drop my kids off to school, I'd say like 80% of my day is done. You know, then I'm sort of in coast mode. You know, I can meet a client for lunch, I could show property, I could do what I need to do, but you know, stay focused on the ball. Don't let small things derail you. It happens all the time. You know, you can't control everything. You know, control what you can control. You know, focus in front of you, and mind, body, spirit. You know, I really believe in all those. Take time for yourself, read a book for, you know, a half-hour workout, go for a walk, put your phone away, do things to keep you right, and then your business will be right.
I think it's very important because the saying is, we realtors work 24/7. You do need to take time away from the business on yourself. Darcy, what is the biggest challenge you faced and how did you overcome?
Well, you know, it's funny. When I opened my business in 2001, then 9/11 happened 2 months later, and you think, gee, this is interesting, because you're just starting out and you're like, okay, this is cool. You cruise through that. No big deal. I think the most challenging part in my career was when our market crashed in 07, 08, 09, you know, and fortunately I was more stable in the business and had been in it long enough, because, you know, everybody, I don't care who you were stuck to a wall like Velcro, you know, hoping you're going to make it out on the other side. And no one did short sales, and Garrett Barnes and I worked together, and he and I figured out, we learned how to do short sales. It's cool. We still talk about it to this day, because nobody knew it was going to go on with that. And it was scary, you know, when you're invested, not just, it's one thing if, you know, I'm just hanging my shingle. It's another thing when it's you're responsible for everybody and making sure everybody keeps going and whatever. And we were just like everybody. It was difficult. Man, I learned more during that time in my life about myself, about what you can overcome, what you can teach yourself, that, you know, well, there's only this way. No, because we figured out all how to do short sales. And what ended up being cool about it was, you know, on the island, it's a little bit different animal. The agents back then, you know, a lot of it were a lot of people too. It wasn't their primary job. You know, we had a lot of people at that time in the industry were retirees and kind of had a nice pension going, unless they lost it or something. But
Well, a lot of
yeah.
the agents were taking that second or full-time job.
Oh, yeah. But I mean, in our marketplace on the island, it was a little different, because we have more people that transitioned as a second career. So they kind of had some stability. It wasn't like us, a lot of us, that this is all we did, you know? But what was interesting about it was the agents were like, I am not dealing with these short sales because they're hell. We all know that. They're a pain in the neck. My longest one took 18 months to close. But we got them closed. It was awesome. It was a challenge. But all the agents started referring me business because they didn't want to deal with it. And they knew, well, Darcy will do it. It was like a Wheaties commercial. Mikey will eat it, whatever. But or whatever that was, Kellogg's. Yeah. Was it Life? Yeah,
Like,
Life.
yeah,
Sorry. I
yeah,
didn't know
like,
what
yeah.
cereal. I don't eat cereal. But that was I would say the biggest challenge for me in the industry. And you re-taught yourself. And we talk about educating yourself and understanding. And look, at banks didn't know what they were doing. Trust me, as we all know that went through them. I'm sure a lot of you did. That was the biggest challenge for me. And I was very, very proud as an independent broker and a boutique shop to make it through the other side when you didn't have this, the support of the big, your big affiliates and your team and your strong people. And you want to talk about your team and having the right attorneys and title people and bankers, because you would have never made it through that if you didn't have that team. And it was awesome. And we made it through and we're here today. But there you go.
Great story. Okay, this question is for you, Charles. From your perspective, what does the future of real estate look like?
Future of real estate.
You want to give her the answer I gave you on my phone last week? No,
Yeah.
I was teasing with them.
Future real estate, again, I'm in the now person, so I'm not, I live in the present,
Okay.
so, future of real estate, probably more, less getting to know people.
Should I redirect the question, the future of real estate on Anna Maria Island?
Our crystal
like-
balls are cracked. He told you that already.
Yeah, I don't
We
have that.
answer. No, I'm kidding.
I like the market. I see the Anna Maria market, like if that's your question, like more specific. I like the market. I'm always a fan of it. I put my money where my mouth is. I invest in the market. I see the market transitioning away from what a lot of people think it is, of just these VRBOs and stuff like that. Actually, most of them, the numbers don't work. So I'm very like quantitative, analytical. You can't buy a house for $4 million and
Cash flow.
cash flow. It
Get
doesn't
real.
exist. You're better off sticking your money in a money market account. But I do believe that it's attracted a new buyer. So I think the new buyer that's coming in the market is a true second home, true primary house, someone that wants to live there, someone that wants to make the community better. So long term, I'm a huge fan of where Anna Maria is going, and looking forward to seeing it.
So on Anna Maria Island, because there's a lot of seasonals, you really have to know a little bit about property management, a background of seasonal rentals, because you're getting these investors that probably have a lot of questions when you're taking them out and showing them these properties.
All the time. Yeah, absolutely.
So Darcy, from your perspective, what does the future of Anna Maria real estate look like?
I think, and it's funny, I was teasing Charles because, he called me like a week and a half ago and just, picking my brain. What do you think is going to happen? I told him the world was coming to an end just so he'd freak out for a couple of days.
Yeah.
But I think real estate's good. There's always an opportunity. So it's a little bumpy right now. So it slowed down. What do you think it was going to do? We all sold in a pandemic. None of us have ever done that. So everyone's got really short-term memories on what a normal real estate market is prior to a pandemic. So the newer ones in the business that have only been a few years, you don't know what that is. This is we're getting back to a more normal real estate market,
I can remember showing property during the pandemic and always wearing a mask. And finally, when things started to lift, the customer said, well, I didn't know what you really looked like.
Yeah, it was funny. That would always be a joke. And you could put there, that was a whole fun part of masks anyway. But yeah, it's true. But I'm just talking about the boom in the real estate that we had here in Florida when everyone thought they were never going to leave their house in New York ever again. And they were going to be trapped forever. We're all going to go to paradise. I don't blame you. So yeah, we had an insane market for a couple of years. So I just, I think it's been a little challenging to get some of our sellers and buyers too to understand where are we fleshing out and leveling out. And I think that, we're there. versus you look at numbers last year, this year, I think we've leveled out. I think that we're gonna just see a steady flow and I think real estate's good. I mean, we're very fortunate, all of us, to sell where we sell. Can you, I know that we all have our challenges, but we're very fortunate because, we're not just selling homes, we're selling a lifestyle. We're fortunate to be able to have a lifestyle here to sell. Who's selling a lifestyle in Oklahoma? I don't know, unless you guys want to go corn and have cows, although I have cows. But, I think that everybody wants to live in paradise and be on the beach and be in Florida. They're going to pay for it. I agree with Charles. In our market on the island, I see the shift where people aren't so rental driven. And I want that for my community. We really would like to see the shift back to have more neighbors and have more residents and have that and have a little bit better balance. There is absolutely no way you can cash flow these houses, what they're on the market for. You just can't do it. It's,
And then go back to like the primary purpose for you selling a house is someone who wants a house.
right.
Get out of the investment
Mindset.
side of it a little bit.
Right.
And then, something I was always told like in the very beginning is like, help people that need your help. There's enough people out there that really need your help, that want your help.
Right.
Focus on those people. And then there's other people that are users. Once in a while, it's nice to make money off of a user.
Mm.
I'm happy with some of these investment guys and they come to me and I sell them a house, but I don't give them attention that I give someone that really wants my attention or needs it. Like so balance that out, balance those, help people. There's so many people out there that really need your help. Like go out there and help those, focus, put your attention that way and you'll do well.
The strong will survive in the market, but I think the market overall, I think we're going to be just fine. I think we'll all just kind of bump along here for the next year. I told Charles that, and I don't know. What do I know? I don't, but everything has peaks and valleys. And I think we're just kind of here and going to cruise along for a while. And I know depending on markets, for us, we're not as interest rate sensitive in most of our market, but yeah, I go right over the bridge. I'm in Northwest Bradenton. I'm interest rate sensitive. So, those are playing a lot of factors too. I understand that, but reality of it is, when I was in real estate, it was nothing to have 16% interest rates. So I'm sorry you're having to pay 8. That was kind of like normal. So, 3%, get over it. It's over. That's not going to happen. And I hear people say, well, I'm going to wait till the interest rates drop. Well, you do that. So let's wait till an interest rates drop. So, okay, let's do that. So then I'm going to have 50 buyers bidding on the house because the interest rates drop. So now you're going to pay 25, 30% over on the value because everyone's going to bid the price up. So tell me how that makes sense. I'd rather see you pay it on the front end and refinance it when the rates come down and get in the house now when you don't have that competition. I mean, it's exhausting, as you know, and then you're out with your buyers forever showing them things and they've lost 20 houses in bidding wars and it's tough. And then you're going to start bidding against your investor groups that come in with cash and your buyers have no chance. So just, that's a little point for interest
That's
rate
excellent
answer.
advice, and most of the experts are saying the same thing about the market, the interest rates, if you listen.
I think one more thing, I'll just back up. I think the biggest thing I sell is the biggest commodity anybody has is time. So like when I go back to that with people, it's like the time is now. Like I can't tell you what your tomorrow is or your next week or your next year is. Life changes. There's things that happen. Your biggest commodity that you have or anyone has, and you can't buy more of it, is time. So if you really want to be here, figure it out. Let's figure it out together. Let's not, stall on it because you don't know. You have no idea. So, use that time you have now. You want to be on the beach? Let's do it. Let's figure it out.
I'd like to be on the beach right now, Charles.
Yeah, me too.
Okay, we're gonna start wrapping it up because we want to open the floor up to your questions and the people on Zoom. The final question that I have in the reflection is, what advice can you give someone new to the business or struggling to grow their real estate business? Darcy.
Network. You got to get out and hustle. You've got to be a squeaky wheel. You've got to get out and hustle. I mean, there is no secret sauce to this. Hard work is where it's going to get you out in the market and get you going. And nobody, if you look at statistics and read, nobody stays consistent with anything that they do. They might have a marketing idea and they'll stick with it. Well, I sent postcards out to my neighborhood twice and I never got anything. Okay, well, why don't you send them for the next 5 years? I mean, nothing happens overnight. So you have to be out hustling. You've got, be engaged, get involved. I mean, like I always say, the squeaky wheel gets the grease, and you've just got to get out and get involved. And I know I make it sound so easy, but I do it still every day. And I've been doing this 33 years and I do it every day. There were years I was involved with the Manatee Chamber of Commerce, as many know, and that was a whole nother thing that opened up a whole nother network of clients for me. I didn't go into it because I was looking for clients, but it organically happened. And get involved in your community, or donate your, volunteer your time, or get involved. And I'm telling you, that's what starts the ripple effect. And it takes time. This isn't going to happen overnight. And, just please remember that, because you're all going to be amazing if you're just starting out, or you've been in it a long time. You're good at what you're doing. You got a lot of value, and you got to know that and let people know that, and get out and just shake it. That's what I can say.
Great advice. Charles?
I go back to like product knowledge, like know your product, know it better
Mm-hmm.
than anybody else, be the expert, and then, do what you love. Like I said that
Knowledge is
earlier,
power.
continue to do what you love and spend more time doing the things you love, and that'll create, success forward. Don't be afraid to fail. Like some people measure
Mhm.
just success. I like to measure failure. Like, how many times did you fail this week? Well, if you
A
haven't failed this week, you probably didn't do enough. Measure failures as successes. If I fail enough, then I'm bound to succeed at something. So I look
That's how
forward.
you learn.
I look forward to failing. Like, get a no. Meet people, and don't be scared of failing. Failing is the key to success.
Mhm.
That's
How you learn.
fail
Just
more.
like learning from
It's
your
learning.
mistakes.
Yeah, it's learning.
Doors closed and one opens.
Yep.
Okay, folks, we've gone through all our questions, and does anyone here have any questions for Darcy or Charles? Andrea over here has the microphone, if you want to raise your hand for a question. We've got,
Mhm.
okay, question? I can speak loud.
Oh, we can't miss you on Zoom. Don't want to leave our little Zoomers out.
Hey. Where do you find, can you hear me? Okay, where do you find that most of your cash buyers are coming from?
All over.
I think
A lot of the
yeah,
Midwest.
Midwest is a huge market here.
Midwest is huge.
And then within the state of Florida, I think,
Yep.
a lot of people like to come here within the state. So I think
Mhm.
Orlando, Tampa, Lakeland is a huge draw for us.
Mhm.
We're starting to see more people come from across the state, just because I think we're much better value priced than they are. So, I look at other markets too. So people are like, Anna Maria is so crazy. The market's crazy. I was in Palm Beach 2 weeks ago, and last year they had 200, I think something like 150 or 200 sales over 40 million. And they had another 15 over 100 million. And I said, we are value, like, relative, like understand other things. And, so we're starting to see people come across, which we haven't
Mhm.
seen in the past. But I like the Midwest is strong for us. The state of
Mhm.
Florida is strong for us. I don't see Canada anymore. I don't see Europe that much.
Mhm.
And we see some of the Northeast, like the Boston. We'll never get the true Manhattan buyer. They like the other coast.
Mhm.
But Jersey, Boston, like some of that, New Hampshire, those little pockets, New England areas, we get a lot of buyers from.
A lot of the bulk of the money's coming from there. I do see you're seeing some people coming in from Colorado, California. You're seeing a shift out of there a little bit, which is interesting too. And Charles is right. I think on the East Coast, even just the pricing alone, but it's a complete shift in the lifestyle over there too. There's a lot of change going on over on the East Coast. It's different, where we're still considered a little sleepier and quieter, that people crave that than, so.
Well, I-95, everybody drove down, settled on the East
Mhm.
Coast.
Yep.
Today, you guys are right, they're coming over to
Yeah.
I-75, where our Midwesterners would settle or buy their
Right.
second homes.
Mhm. Oh,
Mr.
come on,
Apostrophe.
Mr. Apostrophe.
First, thank you both for your positive insights. It's really a treat to listen to you. And I'm not teasing, Cindy. You think I am, but I'm not.
Thank you, Tom.
I believe that, the real elephant in the room in terms of our market, because I think the market is still very, very good. But there is an elephant in the room, and it's insurance. And I think it's at a crisis. And I am curious as to what we all can do as professionals in this business to cause the forces that can contribute to positive change, to make those changes. Charles, you made the point, the state has not stepped up.
That is correct.
But I think the collection of all of us as business people, as economic developers for our communities, as members of an association and an MLS, need to find some way to band together and force this issue to go in a positive direction instead of the direction it's currently going.
Well, unfortunately, it's
So again,
political.
Pointed out that companies are leaving the state instead of coming here. I'm convinced that the state of Florida, through reinsurance programs, could change this picture overnight. How do we all accomplish that?
I think we hire you to spearhead it.
Yeah,
Mr.
'cause
Bosworth.
Tom is always our leader. He's great.
Expensive.
You know, I mean, I know FAR has been very involved in the insurance side of things, fighting for us. It's hard. You feel like you're this little guy and your little voice isn't going to make any difference, which is hard because unfortunately, you know, part of our insurance industry is a political issue too. And we know that. And how do you, I mean, it's a tough slope. I do agree. They haven't done anything. Our state's stuck their head in our beautiful sand and, I don't know how we're going to get out of it. And, it's
hard.
I wish I had the answer.
It's heartening when you hear people, especially retired people on
Fixed incomes. Yes, tough.
Insurance is now more than their mortgage.
Yep. Yeah, it is. And property taxes too. I understand, I get that. And you always have to build in some cushion there. We understand that. But yeah, we're a huge retiree community on fixed incomes and it is really hard. And listen, I'd be shocked. I mean, I know I've had plenty of people call me saying, Darcy, we can't afford our insurance. My insurance went from $3,000 to $7,000. Well, if you're on a fixed income, that's a lot of money, let alone your utilities are going up, your cost of living's going up. It's great when we're thinking about big number houses and these are their third or fourth homes, but let's get real here. We have a lot of people, these are their primary homes and that's our job to advocate for these homeowners. And I don't know what the magic answer is on that, but yeah, the insurance is really scary. Are you even, I don't know. I don't know the answer to it.
After the Surfside Miami collapse building, that's
Dealing
also
with that too.
a
Yeah.
huge effect on condo buildings. I know one on Siesta Key that every owner, they were assessed. I can't remember how many units, but the bill came to about 500,000 because they had to borrow the money in order to pay the insurance.
Yeah, your condos are, the condo market with the Senate bill that is passed, that everything goes into effect next year. And those of you that are more in a condo market or driven, you guys will know about that, obviously. And if you don't, you better figure it out. But these associations now all have to step up and, it's a question now. One of Lindsay in the room, she has a condo. I have a client and what did my client do? You would have thought he wrote the Senate bill. Every detailed question on every single thing. And what is that? All your budget, your planning, your maintenance schedules, all these things, because now your buyers, especially on a Barrier Island condo, they're paying attention because you're going to walk into a condo and a lot of these condos you'll see don't have any reserves and the state is requiring that now in addition to all these maintenance issues and lifespan issues and roofs have to be done and within 15 years, all these things that associations would put off. Well, it's not so bad yet. It's not so bad yet. That's going to be a big thing in the condo market. And we've been selling condos now that we know these associations know, we know it's not voted on yet, but we know that we're going to have a $50,000 assessment coming. My sellers are paying those assessments and crediting it in the cost or reducing the price and letting people know because it's a community. And once they're talking about it, you got to communicate it. But it's making a big change in the condo market. And granted, this is, 3 floors. So, if you're parking's your first floor. So if you have a second floor of a parking, all those condos apply. And they all have to come into compliance next year.
Within 3 miles of the water.
Yes, correct. Sorry,
I thought
yes.
there was a question over there. Okay.
I wanted to thank you both. Whoops, can you, this on?
Mhm.
Okay, I wanted to thank you both for your time and I've worked with you guys
Hi,
over the last
Linda.
20 years. I want to say you're fabulous to work with. I have a particular with Charles, I have to tell you, because I just, Charles showed me a property the other day, one of his listings, and sorry, Darcy, I haven't shown any of yours
Yes, thanks,
recently.
Linda.
I'll
It's
be
all
out there
right.
tomorrow.
I'm safe.
But no, Charles, I'm not gonna name any names, but I had some other agents that I called on their properties and,
They don't call
one of
back.
the agents never even ever called me
Called back.
back. This is $1 million plus
Mhm.
property. I tried to schedule a showing and
It's
I
un-
finally, 2 days later, got a call back. And an apology, they didn't have their phone with them and I was like, wow, my phone is attached to me by Velcro, I think. But Charles, you did an amazing job of showing the property. You
Thanks,
know your
Linda.
product. You're just always been a great person to be. Both are great to work with. But my
Thank
recent
you.
experience was the difference with Charles and some of the other agents. He just does a fabulous job and I just want to say thank you because I know you took a lot of time and you were just great to work with. So that's all. I want to thank you.
And
Thanks,
thanks,
Linda.
and talking about returning phone calls.
Yeah, that's-
What in the world? What's wrong with you
How do you
people?
survive now?
I mean,
returning
how
calls?
your phone is your business and I don't understand that either, Linda. I get it too. And we have I mean, what in the world are you doing? Or it's like a battle when you're talking to them. But anyway.
Yeah, I
let's-
think
let's
that's
go from
a
there.
huge obstacle.
Gosh, don't get me on that soapbox.
Huge obstacle with a lot of new people in the businesses.
Get out,
It's
get out.
usually if someone's calling you, it's time sensitive.
Yeah,
So,
You
you
can
know,
text, you can call, you
Yeah.
can email, there's plenty of,
yeah.
no
Right.
excuses.
If I miss your call, you're always gonna get, you know, I'm in a meeting or something's going on, give me 15 minutes, I'll call you back. Can you text me now? I can text while I'm showing, I can do this. But you have to have that ability to communicate. You have to have, you know,
absolutely.
if you don't, again, probably not the right business. If you don't want to return your calls, if you don't want to return a text, like a simple, just to acknowledge people. I received your call, thanks. Give me 20 minutes.
I
You know,
freak
can you
out.
text me?
Yeah, I know
Yeah,
you do.
I don't understand that. It drives
It's
me
hard
nuts.
too, like, you know, if you're busy and I get it. I mean, if you're out all day with people and you didn't plan on it, I mean, we all have those days. I get it. But if you could read your voicemails now, then God, worst case scenario is if it's something that you feel needs send it to somebody to return the call for you or copy the text. That's what I do a lot. You know, because then you get all these texts too. And I struggle with this. Oh my gosh, I got 50 texts while the day, and I got to figure out and remember I didn't lose it because I've had that happen where you get so many and then it's way down here and I got to catch up and try to find it. So it's hard to balance that sometimes.
I have a joke that I only mention to certain customers that don't answer their phone. I tell them, it's a good thing you're not my attorney and I'm on death row.
Oh yeah, that's very good.
I think we have a question here.
Once again, we all appreciate your time and rather than putting this together to get top producers. We just noticed it, so. thank you very much for that. Charles is kind of headed to do a bit more, but Darcy and I is the island. And from what I read, 80% of the properties there are what as owned by investors currently. And I understand there's some issues in possibly going forward with taxing, that we try to get more permanent homeowners to the island. But what do you do when you know the ROI or return on investment is not going to justify the price of the paying with an investment? How do you keep them in the game? And do you go to the only answer I've been able to come up with is the appreciation value over time will net you a profit throughout the year annual profits.
Yeah, it's a tough
Pretty much,
question.
yeah.
Yeah,
Good question.
I don't work with a lot of rental properties, like Darcy handles a lot of those. I don't have a rental department. I don't work with many of those, and not a lot of my clients rent their property. Well, a lot of my clients do develop properties not for the purpose of someone forward renting it, but for the purpose of creating a nice home for that next buyer. So, you know, I go back to biggest commodity of someone's time. If you find the right properties and you understand how the numbers work, people will pay for that time. A lot of people don't want to spend the 2 years of building a house and going through permitting and
Mhm.
builders and
For
furnishing and doing all this stuff. So they're willing to pay a profit to someone that understands that process and has that product available for them. So that my side of it, I work with a lot of those clients. So, and we, going into a project, a lot of times what I do is I'll find a property specific that I think works for them to develop for that next buyer. So I run my numbers and I run my numbers in the now. So I'm not forecasting future, we need this much appreciation for this to happen, and I look for a big enough return when we add it all up that I know I can sell the property for today. When we work the numbers backwards, that, the market would have to get hammered for us to get hurt. So, I look at what else, alternative investments are out there for people that are conservative, safe. And I think of, real estate in prime areas. I like to work, I also subdivide the island in different categories. So I like to work A-rated properties. So a lot of people say I stay on the outside of the island. So I like to stay on the beaches, the bays, the views, the closer to the beach. So I think those have more upside when the market's running, and they're more protected when the market's on the downside. But again, biggest purpose for someone buying a house is they want to use it. They want to bring their kids, grandkids, family, friends, they want to spend their time there. So I go back to that also.
But I think a lot of them look at the appreciation, and like Charles said, is the location. If you're looking at it where it is hard to, cash flow anything, and you're looking at appreciation, is to be in a safe area on the island. So if you did have a big blip, that you can weather it, and your zoning's part of that too, and the rentability of it. Granted, this person might not want to, but the next person might. So if you need to move something quicker or not, that you take that into consideration. But a lot of them are looking at the appreciation side and hope to carry their, the bulk of their costs,
We have a question to the left here.
Oh, Lindsay, did you have it?
Yeah, I just got two questions quickly. One, what is the update? Have you heard anything about the three city mayors from Manson County forcing them all to become one city? And
Oh.
two, have you have any updates on the 3-story parking garage that was approved by the?
Is Will
You're
Robinson,
not allowed to ask that question because we're sick of answering about it. No, I'm
is
teasing.
Will Robinson here? I think
Yeah,
that's our-
where's Will? I'm gonna text him right now and give him some heck. You wanna answer that?
I mean, I know the parking
yeah.
garage when I think it passed everything locally
yeah.
to go to the state.
Notice
and-
we're not paying attention to the parking.
Yeah,
Stop
again,
that.
there's always things that are gonna change. Change you can't stop all the time, so you learn to adapt to it. So if there's a parking garage, does it change the beach? Does it change where you live? Does it change your purpose for going to the island? To me, no. Does it maybe help? I don't know, until it's done and it's there and we've lived it with it, we play Monday morning quarterback, we'll know the answer. To me, all three cities are different. They've always been different entities, from a cost side of having like a building department or something like that. But, each city is so unique. It's like saying all three of your kids are the same, all three cities out there are completely different, unique, and you like them for different reasons. So I might take away some of the character of some of those. And I think there's some big opposition on that side of it. So, I don't have those answers though.
I think that, we've talked consolidation for years. This is not a newbie. And years ago, I remember being asked to serve on a committee about it. I said, yeah, let me commit business suicide. I'll get on that. But, like Charles said, each city is very individual. When I was a little kid, it was like, I lived in Anna Maria. I grew up in the city of Anna Maria. So if you went to Bradenton Beach, it's like me going to Lakewood Ranch. Now it's like, it's right there. It's weird. And, like Charles said, these cities will fight to the death to keep their fiefdoms. This isn't happening. Now you've got the state involved, we know the powers that be trying to push this, but I think this is all, and I don't like to talk politics, but I think a little bit of it is a little bit of a power play with stuff going on with our parking issues and garages and all these kind of things. So let's just leave it there. So now we're just nudging people to poke bears a little bit. I think that, like Charles, it would be very good for our cities to combine our building department and some of our infrastructure stuff, our public works, things like that, that we could work smarter, more cost effective. We're paying, what we're paying is crazy. So I do think that, and it's really hard, and especially those when you toast up here and I have a separate building department here, I go right here, my rules are different, my building department's different, my zoning is different. Now I'm gonna go here and now it's completely different. And if you come out to the island and you don't sell that, you won't have a clue. And I don't know about Charles, but we've had many people come in our office that were sold a piece of property and go, well, our realtor told us we could rent it. Well, no, you can't. You're in Holmes Beach and in R1 zoning. Look at the zoning map. And it's not, oh, well, they said we can rent it all over. I've had listing agents out there tell me stuff. And I'm like, do y'all know what you're talking? This is, no, you can't. So
important.
it's huge. So I think in consolidation wise, some of those things would help a little bit
Yeah, I
too
think
from
as
the
someone,
building
yeah,
department.
someone become easier. And I think
Sorry.
also like police force, like fire departments, stuff like that out there could be, I mean, it's a 7 Mile Island.
Yeah,
We-
we
We have a sheriff, we have a Holmes Beach, we have the Braden, everybody has their
Yeah.
own unique,
Anna Maria was smart. Well, they couldn't afford to fund fund the pension for this, so they had to disband and lease from the sheriff's department. And so, that's one thing, but we still have, I sit on the pension boards of our Holmes Beach Police Department. Each city has, they're funding all of this. And it's a lot of money. So there's a lot of things we could do to work smarter and still have everybody keep their individuality, and work together. At least right now, our mayors are all working together, which is a plus.
first.
Okay, Denise, you have 2 questions online.
And Lindsay had one. too. Oh, good. Mhm. Oh, we knew that. What is, can you repeat what do we feel about the investor pools? Oh, I think that's already happened, somewhat.
Yeah, I mean, I think different investor pools have different,
Yeah,
purposes,
Mhm.
some are into, creating opportunity for people forward too. So I think you do need investors, you need people that will help, move communities forward. I mean, without some investors and new houses and other things, the places that we do enjoy to go don't exist. If people aren't drawn to the island, then there is no waterfront restaurant, there is no place to grab there's no Duffy's, there is no this. So it's like, we do need other people out there. We don't have enough full-time residents to support the businesses out there. So, I'm happy that, I'm pro like a balance, I guess I would say, like a balance of, maintain the community. So, and I think some investors do a great job with that. Others,
Mhm.
not so much.
it's a slippery slope for us. We work with a lot of these people. We understand, I think I understand the back part of that question, probably that we read about a lot in the paper, what goes on our island. I think some of the big investor, it's hard because you're never going to compete and buy anything. And that's hard for people, but it is what it is. It's called, it's reality. But I do think that, and I agree with Charles, and Charles and I both have the same mindset that, it's our community too. It's our neighborhood. It's my neighbors, my family, been out there for generations. You want to see that balance. So we're trying hard to keep that. And I think more people that are coming in want that and don't want that investor side. So, everything shifts and then it comes back and then it settles back down. And we just have to work hard to keep finding that balance. And we need to out there because our island is important to every one of you sitting in this room because it draws everybody here. Yes, I know some people play golf, but you know what I'm saying? But everyone comes because of the beach, and our island is is the jewel of this whole county. And we need to make sure that it's handled, we take good care of it, Mhm. Lindsay, she had a question too. None. Not at all.
Cash buyers?
Yeah, I think actually like
Seriously, I don't.
interest rates to the like that top tier real estate,
Doesn't-
when interest rates go up, they actually make more money on their money. So they're not hurting, they're doing better. So when my money market account went from 1% to 5.5%, I'm doing better. I have more variable income to spend, disposable income out there. So it doesn't hurt them, it helps them. So people, interest rates are, well, on the other side, they're doing much better. Their portfolios are growing. So I think it's the opposite.
I do too.
So it's an inverse relationship. How you think it would generally apply to real estate as your interest rates go up, prices go down, less people are buyers. You have to balance that out. In different markets where the price point's higher, it helps it.
And I think some people are just, a lot of it, if they're financing, it's more of a short-term hold anyway, so they're not as concerned about the interest rate because they're not looking at anything to hold for long-term. So I really don't think that affects them too much. I think if anybody probably looks at an interest rate at all out there is probably your $1 million and under buyer, where they might do a little more of the financing than over that price point where most of them are cash. But a lot of these people are not looking at long-term positions anyway, so.
One last question.
So for us that are not so analytical folks, and Charles, you mentioned that you get up in the morning and, know your market, maybe share with us what you do as far as the analytical side of your business? Like, what do you look at in the mornings? You check over?
Yeah, I'm obsessed with like emails and like what hit the market. So like, my wife would say, I can't go to sleep without checking the computer one more time. It's just, I need to know if something hit the market. I set up searches for myself, like a customer, you set up for a customer. So anytime something hits the market, I get pinged immediately. But I like to maybe pride myself on knowing what happens to the market before it happens. That's where like building those relationships, talking to other realtors, and that's most of my time in the business side of it. Is I want to know what you don't know. So instead of everybody that searches the zip code and they can tell me the 100 houses or 80 houses that are on there, tell me about the 15 or 20 that you don't know about. That's what I want to know. That's why you're going to call me. Those are the things, the value added that I'm going to provide. Is I'm going to make sure I know more about it than you do. I'm a reason that you're here. I'm going to show you, great, you picked out those. Well, what about these? Well, what about that sale? Well, you don't know about the sale because it was private. You don't know about this. Let me show you what you don't know. And then again, create that value added. People want to know information that they don't have. And I think that's, by creating relationships together, that's your biggest resource. Because, with the bigger, third-party sites out there, the Zillow, Realtor.com, everybody knows what the basic, everybody knows the basic stuff. So tell me what I don't know. That would be my question if I was entering a market as a buyer. If I was looking for a place in, XYZ place, and I said, the first thing I would ask realtors, like, I know what I could pick out, and I feel like I could learn a market pretty quick, especially a smaller market. So if you picked out any random market in the country, I think within a couple of weeks I could probably figure it out. But I want to know what I don't know about that market, and that's how I can really gain knowledge to move forward in the market. So tell me like little things going on. Tell me about what's going on in the city hall here. Tell me about what's going on with this. Are there any new businesses opening? What do people want to be here? Like, why am I here? Show me, give me a tour. Like, I always feel like I don't have problems selling houses. Sometimes I have problems selling Anna Maria. So if you don't like Anna Maria or the islands, and I'm showing you the islands, I understand I could show you 1 million houses. You're not a buyer for us. So, and that's fine too. Not everybody is a buyer for our area. So, let that go.
Does that answer your question? 'Cause
Mm.
we're out of time. Thank you
Perfect.
so much. Can we give a great round of applause for Darcy and Charles? Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.